You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan. I am here, as always, with my co-host, Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Good morning.
I really like that shirt.
Good. I do too. I'll let you have it sometime.
Good. I appreciate it. You've done that in the past.
I have.
And I've always returned them, but sometimes you say, no, keep it.
Rarely.
And I think that's because you don't want to wear it after I've worn it.
Could be.
Yeah. Anyway, we are here with Dr. Rahmany, Dr. Nima Rahmany, who has a really interesting take on something that you and I are very familiar with. Foundationally, a lot of, even though we are both very, very psychodynamic in our orientation, we have always practiced a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Right.
And so, Dr. Rahmany, could you tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into kind of what your take is on this whole cognitive behavioral kind of approach?
Sure. It's great to be here. I'm really stoked to be chatting with you, gentlemen. I'm a chiropractor. I graduated chiropractic school in 2001, and I was really proud of the fact that, people coming in with their health problems, I was like, I'm getting to the root cause, whereas in medicine, they just want to give you pills and cover it up, right? And then fast forward about 10 years into practice, just getting to know my patients, and I'm a personable type of person, so I just get involved, and I listen to their stories, and each of them were coming in with stress-related problems.
Yes.
Like, are you noticing that these stress-related issues over time will lead to chronic health issues, tension in the jaw, headaches, digestive problems. And I just thought, okay, well, after about 10 to 15 years, after I lost a patient because of a heart attack, because she came in with this story of suffering from her past. She was, a victim of her circumstances. And I helped her quite a bit over 3 months, but then she dies of a heart attack, and it was like, that's it. That's it. I want to take everything that I've learned in my own personal development and start to become a teacher. The word doctor actually means teacher. And I wasn't really teaching. I was just treating. And then when people were coming in with stress-related problems, I would refer them to psychologists, right? And I noticed that going in week after week, talking about the same thing wasn't really getting them out of their rut. So I said, all right, I'm just going to start creating these workshops called Life Skills for a Stressful World. So I would teach them about, their values, having a mission, having, being able to take their past and turn it into something meaningful, right? And so I noticed that patients that came in to those classes had better outcomes. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So if I could just, because we only have a short show, if I could sum it all up, for the next 10 years, I started adapting my methodology of that 3-hour Saturday morning became a 3-day live event called the Overview Experience, where I teach you a self-inquiry tool that gets you to cognitively restructure the challenges of your past and turn them into your creative fuel and meaningful fuel towards purpose, so that what was in the way, that you perceive that was in the way, you actually see as on the way, so that the distress turns into eustress. It turns into something that's meaningful.
Right. And I love the way you're talking about the stress thing, because we've actually done a couple of shows on the difference between distress and eustress. People have this perception that stress is always negative, and that's just not true. Yeah,
exactly. And you shift that perception and things change, right? And so I was inspired, and slowly I discovered that I really enjoyed teaching those workshops more than I did being in the office on Monday morning. And as the methodology developed and I went through more stress in my life, a divorce, relationship breakdowns, I discovered that what the missing piece in all of the cognitive work I was doing, I realized that the cognitive work I was doing was actually a bypass. I was doing it to try not to feel my pain. And all of the personal development work I was doing was a cunning attempt to try to avoid feelings. And I realized, holy crap, like, this is it. And the latest integration of my methodology is really helping you integrate feelings and traumas that you've gone through. Instead of avoidance, cognitively, you actually go into the fire and heal it through, deep shadow work. And one of the biggest revelations that I had was the thoughts that everybody's trying to change through, the cognitive work. Like, let's change that thought, right? I realized that was a futile endeavor, because our thoughts are determined by our state. So if I'm in a lineup at an airport, and based on when I started studying the polyvagal theory, I realized that if I was in what's called a dorsal vagal shutdown in my vagus, and I was just in a complete shutdown mode, my thoughts are all, I'm worthless. No one's ever going to love me. I'm not going to, all of the usual shutdown, like I'm in a fight or flight or freeze. I'm in that freeze. I'm in a shutdown mode. My thoughts are now going to be in alignment with the state that I'm in. And if I'm in sympathetic mode, sympathetic fight or flight, my thoughts are going to be more aggressive and frustrating and anxious. And when I'm in the ventral vagal states, then I'm in a state of joy. I feel connection. I feel safety.
Right.
My thoughts are then going to be in alignment with that. So I realized that without changing my state first, that the thought cognitive work was not going to take hold, because when I get triggered and activated, 80% of my brain shuts off. So you cannot sit and do counseling or cognitive work in a state where your cognition is impaired.
Right.
So that was a big breakthrough for me. So the methodology I teach is how to drop into the body and transform your state first before you go into changing your thoughts about anything.
So then, just to kind of elucidate some of the vagus nerve is one of the cranial nerves, and it is active in what we call the activation of the HPA, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis.
Correct.
And that is the sympathetic nervous system, and you want to turn that off and activate the parasympathetic nervous system so that whole system is now at a state of rest and calm, rather than, there's the duck, rather than being activated and causing an overload of adrenaline into our system. So then how do you approach that? What do you help people to do? Because you are also talking about shadow work, which is Carl Jung, and embracing the parts of us that we don't want to show to the outside world. We've talked about that on the show before, and we really love the idea of that. So what do you do to try and help people be able to identify their shadow and to be able to embrace that?
Great question. The first thing you do is I have a little training. I can even send it to you, gentlemen, on the 3 different levels and ladders of the nervous system. The first thing you let people do is you show them their 3 stages. You teach them about the nervous system. You teach them about how, when we're activated and we're in sympathetic, these are the thoughts you're going to have. When you're in dorsal vagal shutdown, these are the thoughts you're going to have. The first thing to do, this is all self-work. This is the cool part about it. It's now kind of moving towards helping people become their own healers. And when you teach them about the nervous system and get them become self-aware of where they're at in the ladder first, the first step is self-awareness. I've got to first be checking in. Where am I at? Oh, right now I'm feeling quite dorsal. If I'm in a dorsal state, I don't even want to get out of bed. I don't even want to interact with you. I don't even want to show up to my call or whatever. I just want to hide and isolate. And my job is to recognize, oh crap, I'm in dorsal right now. So what I must do, I must get up. I must start to move. I must exercise. Or the best way to get yourself up the ladder, especially when you're in dorsal, is to find your tears. When you find your tears and you surrender to the futility of that moment, the nervous system magically starts to activate up the ladder into your sympathetic, up the ladder into your sympathetics. And when you're in sympathetic, that high level of energy in your body, the way that you get it out is by running. So this is all body-based. This is like psychotherapy, but it's not psychotherapy. It's actually understanding how the human being operates in the nervous system. When you educate people, they become their own self-healers. You teach them that when they're in sympathetic, like you have to have, like in my programs, we get people to become self-aware of their thoughts and behaviors when they're in each of the levels, so that they can recognize it and then take action. So when I'm in sympathetic, I just got into an argument with a coworker yesterday. I got into sympathetic. I just grabbed my shoes. I went up hiking up Mount Douglas in Victoria, BC. That's just what I do to get that energy through my body, because to sit down and to have a conversation with her or to think about it, I knew was going to be completely useless for me. I know how my nervous system, in that moment, I got to get out and run. Or here's the best part, to express that emotion.
Right.
To express it, to scream. Like, so I'll go out in the woods and I'll be like, ah! Like, that's what I mean by shadow work. By allowing myself the feelings that are naturally coming up to fully express them. The problem is I've been conditioned since I was a child, like most of us, that our feelings aren't valid. Right. That we must suppress them. We can't have anger. We can't express them because we haven't been taught healthy ways of doing it.
And sometimes that's something
I recommend to my clients to go and do kickboxing or punching bag or whatever it is. That's what I mean by getting physically active into the feeling.
And that's something that I tell clients all the time, is that these emotions are hormonally created and they're physiological changes inside your body. If you don't express them physiologically, then they're just trapped. They're just sticking around.
Totally.
The changes are still going to happen in your body, but you're never going to dump the energy because you don't do anything to express it. So can I go back just a minute? And you were talking about the idea where...
We can talk about this all day.
Yeah. So to ID where they are on the tiers, do you encourage people to do that by identifying what they are thinking or identifying how they are feeling in their body? Which one of those comes first?
Just did a group call on this, and the other day is like, it's kind of like I'm encouraging each of you to every one of my clients to know that there's like a little lawyer sitting on your shoulder. There's your dorsal lawyer who wants to convince you that nothing is ever going to work, that you're hopeless, that you're a piece of crap. Okay? Your job is this is the key. You must differentiate yourself from those voices. Once you see them and try to solve them, you know you can't fight thoughts on their own turf. You can't beat thoughts on their own turf. They will destroy you. You must get out of the thoughts and drop into the body and feel the sensation of hopelessness. This is the scariest thing. This is the biggest obstacle for most of us, because we do everything we can to avoid those disturbing feelings. What I do is I say, as soon as I see those thoughts come up, like, you know, you get into an argument with your partner and you're like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I got to get out of here. This is like, all of those thoughts will go there. Instead, what happens is you drop in and feel them and get in. This is the key. Sensation without explanation. Sensation without explanation. And so I did this yesterday while I was hiking up the mountain, and I was hiking pretty hard, and I felt my quads start to burn. And I was like, oh my gosh. Immediately when the pain came up, which is an activation of an emotion, same thing, it's the pain. I felt the pain in my quads. Guess what my thoughts started to say when that happened?
I can't do this. I should quit.
I can't do this anymore. I got to quit. I need to take a break. I need to stop. These were the stories that came up to explain the pain. What happens is these thoughts don't cause our symptoms. Our thoughts are a symptom of our state. This was the biggest breakthrough that I got. It changed the entire game for me. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, I'm hearing these thoughts. I can't do this. So what did I do? As I'm hiking, I dropped into my breath. I dropped into my body. I dropped into the pain of my quads, and I just felt them without any explanation and kept going. And after about a minute of that, I realized something. Oh my gosh, like, I've been making meaning out of pain. I can change the meaning out of it. So I started from that place. Once I got into my body and I just felt it without the story, I started to change the meaning. I started to say, wow, you're getting stronger. You've got this. This is like, you are a badass. And I started to cry. Like, I literally started to cry because I reinterpreted those symptoms. And I got up to the top in tears, having completely just moved all of that sympathetic energy out of my body. And I was like, that's the work. So that's the shadow work. That's my methodology. This is it. And I just literally got to see it in full bloom. And then I ran back and I did a group call and I shared it with my entire community. And I was like, this is it. This is how you do it. Get into the body. You know, whenever let's say you piss me off, we get into an argument. Immediately I feel an activation in my chest. I stop, I pause, I get into my breath, I get into my body, and then I feel the feelings of rejection. I feel the feelings of unworthiness and sit there. And as I sit there and allow them to be, I will start to have implicit memories, because memories are usually more implicit in the body, of when I was a child. Younger self will come up when I was rejected or when I was unworthy, and then I can go in and reparent that younger part of me and tell him he was worthy and tell him, and that's, you use the trigger, then becomes an access point to reconnecting with the younger parts of you that it felt that were unworthy. And you reparent those and come back on the other side and go, wow, thank you. That trigger has now been very useful for me. Instead of something I'm trying to avoid or judge as being wrong, I allow, I embrace. And so when you do that, your relationships change, because your relationship with yourself is transformed.
So you changed, we would call that a cognitive restructure. You changed the story of the pain, turned it from a negative into a positive, which then changed the perception of the pain. So then
100%.
Yeah.
The problem is cognitive restructuring is not bad. It's just most of the time in psychotherapy, you're trying to cognitive restructure to fix a state. But you can't do that. It won't work. It's very temporary. It can't work. So cognitive restructuring is a second step that often psychotherapy ignores the body. It doesn't address the it's like Daniel Siegel's model of the brain. If you see kind of like the four fingers wrapped around the thumb, that's the brain, right? The four fingers represent the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex. When you get activated and triggered, that part of you goes offline. So there's no sense in cognitive restructuring until that part of you comes back online. So I'm not against cognitive behavioral therapy. That's perfect. It's just there's a step that's often missing when two people are in, when you're in a state of alarm. You're offline, so you can't cognitively restructure until you take care of the state first. So that's what my methodology kind of incorporates and integrates.
The activation event, though, was having a disagreement with a coworker. Once you went and had this experience and you were able to dissipate the energy from that emotion, do you then go back and revisit that?
Yes. So what ends up it was my teammate. We're expanding. We've gotten so busy that I'm having to hire more coaches and staff. And I had the perception when I brought it up that my right-hand woman, my right-hand gal, she got, threatened. She's like, wait, new people, what's going on? And so I got activated. And it turns out, as I went in, I realized that her resistance represented the same thing would happen when I was in my chiropractic practice. And I had a big practice going on, and every time we had to hire somebody new, there was dissension amongst the women that were working at the front desk. I don't know if you've ever experienced that before. And it felt like every single time I wanted to grow, every single time I wanted to expand, there was resistance because one of the gals felt her job was threatened. So I had the opportunity to actually see that every trigger, it's not really what it's about. It's about something in the past that was unresolved that's still stuck in your body. That's why I got triggered. And as soon as I moved through that, I could see, I was like, that's what it was. So I would called Kim and said, hey, look, this had nothing to do with you. It was all because of what happened back when I was in practice. And I got to explain to her what came up for me when she said what she said. And then she said, well, guess what? It was the same with me growing up. It was always a surprise. Okay, we're doing this now, and I was never notified. And so she was able to say, because she works with me. She was my first ever client, so she understands the work. She said she was able to say, well, this wasn't about you either. This was about my mom. And I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? And so this tool allows you to take conflict and turn it into deeper intimacy. Now I have a more intimate friendship with my team, because we were able to use that trigger and go inside rather than outside. That's the power of this. And yeah, it helps people with anxiety. Like, she was one of my first clients, 30 years of anxiety medication. She tried literally everything, and she was just labeled mentally ill. You have anxiety, and you always will. And in the last few years, several of my clients were able to, with the assistance of their physician, go off of their meds, because they now have tools and skills to handle their emotions when they come up. So I always tell people, pills don't teach skills.
So let me ask you,
the skill to handle an emotion when it comes up and go inside rather than project outward.
Let me ask you if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly. As I hear you talking, the classic psychotherapeutic approach is not Cartesian. It's more about the mind. We have to get into the mind. We have to understand the structure of the mind. We have to solve what your thinking processes are. What you're saying is that there is a Cartesian approach, that we must listen to the mind and the body. So we have to learn to listen to the body. And what we teach people in our practices are, you have to feel the feeling, you have to label the feeling, identify it, say, oh, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm whatever. And you have to externalize it. You have to say it out loud. I have patients all the time. Go out in the woods, go down the basement, pick up a wiffle ball bat and beat the hell out of a foundation post and say these words out loud. Don't attack anybody with them, but just express them. Let it out. And then the third thing that you're saying is, you have to debrief. Once you have done that and expressed or experienced those emotions, then you have to process it. What was this? Where did it come from? How do I understand it? Am I getting the gist of what you are saying correctly?
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Okay.
Absolutely right. The next step for you.
Don't encourage him.
Don't encourage him. Your next step would basically ask the question, just like when? Just like when?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
When did this? Because nothing really, what you're pissing me off about right now is not about what it's about right now.
So I'm looking at
this coronavirus thing is not about now. It's an old wound that's just being activated, something familiar, whether you were in 9/11, whether you were in the Great Depression. You're feeling these old symptoms again, and it's an opportunity for us to go inside and heal those parts of us that we abandoned. Because when we get triggered, we self-abandon. And these triggers, I've observed, these triggers are a call to action for us to return home to those parts we self-abandoned.
Right. And integrate them into the whole of who you are now.
Right. All of it.
Yeah.
So you have to embrace that realization. That's where the shadow work comes in, is that you take that realization and you embrace it, instead of trying to hold it at arm's length, saying you're a threat to me and I'm afraid of you. You embrace it and say, you are a part of me. I can integrate you into the reality, into the narrative of who I am. And once you do that, now it's no longer a threat.
Well, Nima, there was a term you used earlier in your story about reparenting. You have to reparent yourself to rewrite the script that you live by and redefine who you're going to be. And that so the analogy that I use with my clients is the difference between responsibility and responsibility. And I tell them, you are responsible. You can make your own decisions. You have the power. You are not responsible. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
And if they can grasp that, they can make progress.
Yeah. And the whole purpose of this tool is to widen the gap between stimulus and response.
Yeah.
Because when you don't, you're governed by old complexes. And when you do, you choose and create your reality. You change your relationships. You have that pause, so you can choose rather than have it chosen for you by your unconsciousness, your
So you
complex
change your
that are
patterns.
familiar patterns
Right.
from childhood.
Exactly. So the pattern change is critical. And what I also talk to my patients about is when you are cognitively aware, when you're on point, then you can choose your patterns. But whenever you get distracted or absorbed by a circumstance, you reflexively go back to the old script, the old patterns. But if you learn this process, what you learn is to recognize how to stop it sooner and without going as deeply into it.
The way that you do is by changing your relationship with your body. It's like, really just dropping in and just getting into breath. And so what I do with my clients, we have a breath work. Like breath work is an amazing way because we don't have cognitive memories a lot of the times of these old traumas, but you'll be surprised at what
your
comes
body
up
will know.
during it.
Yeah, you do the body work.
Yeah, and this is why I call it the overview method, because it literally is anything and everything that's worked, and I've integrated it into I don't want to use the term simple, but a step-by-step methodology, so that you then, when you're confronted by a activation in your nervous system, otherwise known as a trigger, instead of reacting, you can just pause and then go into the steps.
So you're telling us
I'm training people how to do that.
If we learn your approach, we don't have to relearn everything in psychology and all the different fields and subsets and theories, because people
pretty much
come up with a language to explain their worldview. And what you're saying is that's all well and good, and it may even be right, but if you don't access the body, you can't go anywhere with it.
First, exactly.
Okay.
First.
All right. Then I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't just first address the state first, then the thought process, the counseling you have going, couples counseling, it's just not going to really do the trick.
Right. Because we're not speaking the right language or the same language with each other. I'm listening to my inner critical self that maybe I don't even know the words for the memories that I have that I've repressed into my body. And if I can feel my body, then those memories can surface and be identified and externalized, and then they go away. Yeah, we were talking at the interruption. Very, very often when you approach a client to say, this is work that you need to do, they really resist it because they say, if I get in touch with the anger, I'm afraid of the anger. I will be so angry and so violent, I'll actually kill people. And then they'll lock me up, and how's that helping me?
I'll be stuck there.
Yeah. Or I'll hurt so much, I'll curl up in a fetal ball and cry, and I'll never come out of the room. So those are not positive outcomes. Why are you asking me to do this? And so your message is, if you can approach doing this, it will dissipate. You have to take it on faith. It will dissipate, and you won't go to either of those extremes. I've never seen it happen.
If you don't address it, even more important, if you don't address it, your body keeps the score.
Good point.
And it comes out in several different ways. Either in a chronic illness, you start getting digestive problems, you start getting hives, you start getting whatever, because your organs will then start to. If you can't cry those tears, your organs will then start to weep them.
So you implode or you explode. You do something with it.
Yeah, exactly. Your health, your biology is calling you to return to those parts.
Yes.
Your biology is begging you to go back to reconnect with the parts of you have fragmented. Because when you're saying, I'm not going to go there, what you're saying is, I'm shunning and shaming part of myself.
Amen.
So I'm a fractured human being. I'm a fractured soul. And I can't be a whole, healthy human being unless I invite those parts of me back in, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
That's our hero's journey. That's what healing is, right?
Right.
And your body is going to express that emotion somehow. Either you're going to express it, or your body's going to express it. And when your body expresses it, it's going to create a psychosomatic disorder that you're probably not going to like.
Can I tell you? Can I get a little woo on you if I were to just tell you what happens if you don't? Now, it either shows up in your own body, or here's the messed up part. If you don't express it, your children will.
Whoa, I like that.
Yeah.
If you don't express it energetically because of the entanglement in the family dynamic, that unexpressed emotion, you think people can't feel it in you. see it. You see it when the client walks in. You're just looking at a bunch of repressed and suppressed emotion right there. You feel it. You don't think your kids can't pick that up?
Right.
They can.
No, I agree
and
with you.
they express it. They express it, and then what happens is my clients will say, people will come to me, could you help my daughter? She's got anxiety. And I say, well, has she been following my content on social media and is inspired to work with me? She's like, no. I'm like, well, how about yourself? What's been going on for you? Well, I don't want to, and you can see that this fear.
I'm not worthy.
You can help your daughter.
For me. Yeah.
Want to help your daughter deal with your own anxieties when you were her age, and then you'll be able to help her. Through empathy. Like, she won't need a psychiatrist or psychologist if you do the work and be able to help yourself at that age and really face and feel those emotions. Then you do the work and others become impacted. A rising tide lifts all boats. And I've seen it happen again and again, where simply by a parent taking it on, they transform the dynamic in the household. All of a sudden, energetically, things shift. And I know that sounds woo, but I'm absolutely convinced.
No, I absolutely agree with you.
I'm afraid that we are out of time, and this has been so fantastic. I have really, really enjoyed this discussion. Nima, can you talk to us a little bit about, I will include some information about you and a link to your website in the show notes,
Sure.
but do you ever get to St. Louis, but the States, if people wanted to come and see you, is there a way that they can do that?
Yeah, well, it's all done online now. I do have my live events, and I think right now in the recording of this is the coronavirus time. So when things open up, we'll have them, and I travel around the world. I do them in Australia, Europe, and North America, primarily in Toronto and Vancouver. Although, if there's a group that is interested in really delving in, and I'm open to the possibility. But right now, I have online events. These things can be taught online. If you want to learn, I have one coming up on Sunday, the Overview Experience. And you just show up. It's a 5-hour event where I take you through the whole process. You get to be part of the community who's all practicing together. I lead a global community of self-healers, people all the way in Dubai and New Zealand and North America and Europe. Everybody's all we're doing the work together. It's really inspiring. It's all on the website. The best place to get access is joining my free Facebook community. It's called Trigger Proof.
Perfect.
How to regulate stress and strengthen immunity during a global crisis. If you just jump into that, I do a training every day. Yesterday I did one about mom guilt. I'll do a session on a client and go, whoa, there's some revelations for you moms out there, and boom, I'll drop it. And people just by attending those trainings, not doing any one-on-one work with me, have been able to have massive transformations just by the awareness of themselves. Self-awareness is the new black. So this is what I love teaching.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show, and we will definitely put that information out if people want to get a hold of you or follow you or be a part of some of those workshops so that they can get access to this, because I think that you are definitely onto something, and thank you for sharing that with us.
So Nima, I just looked
at a great time, such a great conversation. Thank you.
I just looked at Trigger Proof on Facebook. There's also a cover band called Trigger Proof.
I know. I noticed that.
So not to be confused.
Not to be confused, exactly.
I'm gonna have them playing on my first live event.
That would be awesome.
When we open.
It's a different harmony. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks everybody for listening to Psych with Mike, and as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.
Then I'm going to get stuck there.
Well, yeah, I will get so rageful I will kill people and they'll be locked up somewhere. Or I'll get so hurt that I'll cry forever and just die a sobbing sponge,
Exactly.
And
that's the biggest, you're right. They say that a lot.
Yeah.